Do you hear that? Listen closely. Close your eyes even. What if I told you that's the sound of a sold-out show playing huge arenas all across the country?
While you keep your eyes closed, see if you can notice that sound.
That's Jesse Israel, the founder of the Big Quiet, a mass meditation movement.
Notice the weight of your body in your seat.
And it all started in an unlikely place. Coachella.
If you can imagine this, a few of us, maybe a couple other label executives, maybe a manager, maybe even a musician who's going to go on stage a little bit later in the day, all sitting there under a tree while you have 7 or 8 stages blasting music, drunk people and drugged people running around everywhere, sun beating down, like literally, like from a decibel standpoint, some of the noisiest places on earth. And we're in total stillness.
I kind of expect Jesse to always be in that calm, peaceful, meditative state that he's led countless people through. The truth is, though, he's human, just like the rest of us. And his bliss was born out of his battles. How he learned to appreciate and share everything that makes him, him. Today, on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Anyone who knew Jesse as a tween at a private school in Los Angeles might be thinking, wait, Jesse Israel? That Jesse? Jess Man? A meditation expert? Nah.
I think that's when I peaked in life.
7th grade?
7th grade.
This would have been in the late 90s. You know that scene in the beginning of Clueless?
I don't get how guys dress today. I mean, come on. It looks like they just fell out of bed and put on some baggy pants and take their greasy hair. Ew.
That was Jesse. And despite Cher Horowitz's objections, it was a very cool look for guys.
I had the frosted tips, amazing. Bleached hair. I had the Jinko jeans. I only wore my pants below my butt cheeks.
Obviously.
Exclusively. Exclusively listen to rap music.
Yep. He also had a huge amount of confidence.
I was so comfortable as me. And I know that's not the case for everybody at that unique age of 12. But for me, I was so unafraid to be me. And I think because I was in that place, I was magnetizing. And I had a kind of a unique ability to influence and to lead my fellow students. And part of the gift was that I would get in trouble a lot. If I felt that a teacher was disrespectful to me or to my fellow classmates, I could rally all the students against that teacher. So they called me the ringleader. I would get sent to the dean's office about twice a week.
Then came a weekend class retreat in the woods.
And they put all the boys in one cabin, all the girls in another cabin. And they, when the teachers went to sleep, I led the boy students to break into the girl cabin, you know, as one does. It was the best feeling though. Every boy in my class, didn't matter, nerd, jock, weirdo, whatever, everybody came together for this moment.
Understandably, the teachers were not happy. And had the story ended here, Jesse and I might not be having this conversation today. He might have harnessed his charisma differently, continuing to get into a little trouble here and there until he eventually got bored. But instead, he pushed the boundaries a little too far.
The teachers came in really upset. And I remember them saying, if one of you makes another sound, you'll have to sleep with the teachers. And all the boys were terrified. But I remember thinking, there's only 4 teachers, there's 50 of us. If we all make noise, we can't all sleep in there. So I encouraged everybody on the count of 3 to just go nuts. And it was, I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment would really go on to change my life. It was a 1, 2, 3, and we just went bananas. It was great. It was so gratifying. I felt so alive. And I remember the teachers kicked in the door and that look of fear in their eyes. And I knew this is going to be bad.
The school did something they'd never done before. They placed Jesse on a 2-year behavior probation.
So what that meant was if any time over the course of the next 2 years I'd get in trouble, I'd be expelled. If I got in trouble once over 2 years, I'd get expelled. And, I was getting in trouble every 2 weeks. So this is a really big change, and getting expelled was not an option for me. That was my tribe. Those were all my friends where my parents said if I did get expelled, I'd be grounded forever. So I distinctly remember I was put into sort of behavioral therapy. I remember seeing my mom cry for the first time because she was so concerned about me. And I remember realizing, oh shit, this is actually disruptive. This isn't okay. And I was very much told it wasn't okay, by all authorities. So I remember being in this sort of behavioral therapy and pushing that thing down. This energy for gathering, leading, rallying, I squashed it down because I felt like it was this thing that wasn't safe, that could get me expelled, that could make my mom cry. That was a defining moment in my life because it was, I think, the moment I can really point to when I can say, oh shit, that's when my power, when I pushed my power down, where I dimmed my light because I didn't know how to direct my gift in a way that was ultimately generative and of best use. It was disruptive and it was harmful in, a 13-year-old boy way.
Yeah.
But it got pushed down.
Jesse's experience as a preteen feels so different to mine. And I have to think what I felt was more universal. That age for me was like everyone else got the instruction manual for life, and I didn't. I turned to drugs to escape the daily stress of not knowing where I fit in. But Jesse was actually reveling in what he was living in. That is, until he started pushing it down.
In middle and high school, I got quieter. I got a lot more in my head. I really just sort of became aware of other people's perception of me, which was kind of a new thing for me. By the time I was in college, I started having panic attacks. And I distinctly remember, senior year, I was at NYU film school. I distinctly remember the night before I had to give the presentation to my film class of 10 students about what my film thesis would be about, not being able to sleep and having a panic attack. Because the thought of speaking in front of teachers and students was so scary for me. I wasn't piecing it together in the way that I'm describing now, but panic attacks were a real thing for me. And it was incredibly uncomfortable, for anybody that's had a panic attack before, or for anyone that has never had a panic attack. It just feels like an impending sense of doom. It's really hard to show up, let alone to, enjoy life and, enjoy the moments of the present. So it was, I think, more than anything, just really isolating because it was so confusing.
By the way, I also went to NYU, so,
right.
Right? And like Bright Lights, big city, this is not like a coddle you type of school. It's like, you're in the city.
You're thrown
on
right
your
in
own.
it.
And I always kind of joke about NYU. Like, my friends were not like, we're going to go to Kegger. Man, they were like, I'm going to write the next great American novel. Or like, I'm going to, like, everyone there like had ambition and drive and dreams. And I loved that about it. But I got to imagine that must have felt very scary. So what did you do?
Yeah, I love that we share that in common, because I went from what was, a comfortable, smaller community in the private school I went to in LA to, being at a school with 20,000 people in the city. So I think that played a role in the overwhelm.
Right.
I think that actually plays a big part in why the anxiety got to a place of panic at that stage in my life.
You should have tried being a crippling drug addict. It really worked until it didn't.
Here we are now.
Yeah, here we are.
For me, creative pursuits were terrifying because my creativity when I was younger was expressing myself through leadership, but it was still in me. So I played with ways to express it. So radio show on WNYU, so freaked out each time before I'd get on the air, but we kept showing up for it. Yeah. Started a record label out of my dorm room with my college roommate, my sophomore roommate, Will Griggs. We happened to hear about a band at Wesleyan who had made songs for a class out of their dorm room. And we started a dorm room record label to sign and release that band. They're known today as MGMT, the time they were called The Management. And that became another way to, move energy.
Yeah, another way to move energy? Starting a dorm room record label with a band that would achieve super success? Casual.
For somebody who has no idea what it means to start a record label, what were you doing?
So we had no idea what we were doing at the time. And I think this is part of what's so special about, experimenting to explore new potential projects and businesses. I've always loved kind of experimentation. This one I think felt safe because I was behind the scenes. I wasn't on the stage, the bands were. This was 2005 when we started our label. So people were buying CDs less and less. Spotify wasn't out yet. Napster kind of just had its moment. So the industry was really kind of fucked up. But there was a lower barrier to entry because anybody could make music and release it with the way where the internet was at that time. It was just starting to kind of kick off 2005. So we were able to, scrounge together some money, press up some CDs. We got MGMT into a studio for free. We had a buddy who was interning there. So we had the guys in the band late night, recording, writing the lyrics to Time to Pretend, recording Kids for the first time. Eventually, we put the music on iTunes so people could download it. And with time, the band took off, eventually upstream to a larger label. And then by 2008, they were a global sensation.
Yeah.
And they just took off. And I remember so clearly cell phone footage of them playing shows for 10 people in these little frat basements, really awkward. And then 3 years later, playing the exact same song, Lollapalooza, 90,000 people. Yeah. This is a wild moment to see what was possible.
Now, Jesse is able to see it through a lens of what was possible and with gratitude for the challenges that came with the wild ride.
We fucked up a lot. We didn't really know how the industry worked, so we were taken advantage of by larger labels often, and it was really challenging. But that's also how we learned. That's also how so many of those challenging moments, especially earlier on in running the label, formed the man that I am, and also formed so much of the work that I do today. So a lot of challenges. Definitely got fucked over a few times. And I think that's, part of what comes with taking a risk to do something, new and that feels exciting and compelling.
Well, that's something I teach when I teach gratitudeology, is that it's easy to be grateful for the parts that are great. It's harder to learn to love the suck. And because the work doesn't feel like the work when you're in it. It just feels like a series of inconveniences or shitty things happening. You can only see in hindsight, wow, I really learned from that, and I can be grateful for it that it happened. So it sounds like that was a stepping stone for you.
That was a big moment in that I needed that to happen many more times in my life for what you just said to start to stick. I think I'm just starting at 39, and this I'm 100% sure will be a lifelong process. But just now at 39, starting to learn how to actually appreciate the process of a project or a business in its process phase, and not just rely on the outcome or the exit or the big thing selling or the big concert selling out to experience the happiness, and instead to find the appreciation and to find the beauty in the creative process as things are unfolding, not knowing where they're going, facing the ups and downs of the moment.
It all sounds great, right? Except Jesse's mental health was deteriorating.
I would get home at the end of a day and I'd look in the mirror and I would look so unwell. And I remember feeling in my body, this isn't sustainable. If I feel this way and I look this way and I'm my first year out of college, this doesn't seem right. And part of what was confusing about it was that people were so celebratory of what we were doing. That's so cool, you guys signed MGMT. People didn't realize that there was so much more challenge and way less financial benefit than I think people realized. Right. So there was that other interesting piece was on the outside, everything is so exciting. And it's true, it was exciting. There was so much to be grateful for. But internally, it was another story. That didn't make sense. I was burning out for the first time.
Burning out, yeah. You probably put a lot of pressure on yourself. What do your parents do? What space are they in?
Well, my dad is retired now, but he ran a movie marketing business.
Yeah.
He did really well in the entertainment space. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure there.
A lot of pressure.
Not from him, but more from me.
I've said that 100 times. My mom was the best, is the best, nicest mom. That has nothing to do with the lens through which I saw and heard her. She was like perfect. I could never be that. So I just felt, and I think anyone with successful parents probably experiences that.
And keep in mind, this was around 2007.
There wasn't the same level of conversation around mental health as there is today, especially in the music industry. Now it's becoming more commonplace, but it just wasn't there. So I didn't feel like these were things I could talk about. These felt like things that I was uniquely going through on my own that I had to figure out. And it was thanks to my dad, actually, in feeling like I could share some of this stuff with him, that he suggested I check out meditation. He was getting into Buddhism at that time in his life. And it was new to him. And, he was just kind of starting to explore this stuff. He was really into Pema Chodron, who's kind of like a modern day, a Buddhist teacher.
The question is, what kind of world am I creating? What am I adding to? Am I adding to this deep, unconditional love for self and other?
And I think her principles really connected with him. So he was going to her retreats. And my dad, I think, was thinking a lot about how to bring concepts of Judaism and concepts of Buddhism into his life as he was also, running a business and a father and a husband and just looking at how to operate in a different way. And I think I've taken that on from my dad because I think I've applied a lot of that same approach to there's one way to do success, there's one way to show up as a man, and then there are these alternative ways to explore it. So I had that modeling with my dad, still do.
That's beautiful. So you really inspired a lot of this.
Oh yeah. I started learning meditation and practicing it regularly, and it really helped me. Think about meditation almost like sports. Some people might be more into hockey than football. I think it's similar with meditation, different lineages, different styles. Eventually I learned Vedic meditation through learning with our good friend Light Watkins. And that style of meditation, the way Light taught it, it just really resonated for me.
Is that you don't have to sit in an uncomfortable position and you don't have to try to fight off or block out thoughts.
I found it to be really accessible as a busy person. Teacher gives the student a mantra, which is a sound that when we think it softly and gently allows the mind and the body to settle into a more relaxed and rested space. So the practice brings deep rest into our bodies, and it helps regulate and rebalance the nervous system, turn on parts of the brain that get hijacked by stress. So it's a very simple and effortless practice that really anybody can do. And from the first time I learned it, the first time I sat with the practice, I noticed the difference in my energy, in my presence, in my ability to start to move through life.
And at the same time, you're feeling grounded, you're feeling supported, and you're feeling non-attached to the emotion of the thoughts.
the stress and the anxiety went down, and I coupled my meditation with therapy and with medication. You know, it was all three of those things played a role in my journey. Meditation was not like a magic bullet for me, but the more I was practicing regularly, the more I found that I was able to get more out of therapy. But more than anything, I found that I was able to enjoy of my life and enjoy more of what was coming to me in my life. Whereas before, everything felt like I was underwater, and it was so hard to handle. With my practice, the water was down here. I could face it. I could take it on.
Jesse would meditate twice a day. Still does. Every day. No matter where life or work took him. Which brings us back to Coachella. Now, I've been to Coachella. It's bright, it's loud, it's chaotic. Not exactly an atmosphere I'd associate with a tranquil meditation. But I've never been to Coachella with Jesse Israel.
So I'd be at a Coachella backstage, and I'd be in my practice, and other people started to ask about it, and slowly but surely these little meditation groups formed, and I loved it. And it was through those moments that I started to hear other people in the music industry share. Once we'd open our eyes, they'd talk about their panic attacks, they'd talk about their challenges with mental health. And I realized, oh my God, I'm not going through this shit by myself. We're all going through it, we're just not talking about it. So I decided that I would start to organize these group meditations outside of these sort of backstage festival moments. And it was really interesting to see how hungry people were for a space to be quiet, a space to talk about real stuff, a space that wasn't specific to a lineage. I'd only practiced meditation in groups at the Buddhist Center or at the Vedic Meditation Center. It was like, no, people, actually a lot of the people that were showing up for these group meditations, they didn't even have a meditation practice. They just wanted to be quiet with other people.
So every month, Jesse would host Medi Club. And during one of these meditation and discussion sessions, an idea came to him.
Rather, I'd say it came through me, and it was, what if instead of being at the music festival and it's our small little group meditating backstage, what if everybody at the festival is meditating? You know, what if the meditation is the headliner? And I think for me it was with audience like you would see at Coachella. So not a wellness event. You know, that was the thing that was really interesting to me. Because so much of what was fueling me and shaping my life was that I ran a record label, I rode my skateboard everywhere, you know, I drank tequila, I ran a cheeseburger club. There was so much about me that wasn't wellnessy, and I had a meditation practice. I loved group work. I loved, you know, sharing honestly and vulnerably about what was going on in my world. It was holding both instead of one or the other. Yeah. So that was something that just was, you know, I felt really called to. And this was around the time when I was starting to feel more comfortable to access some of that 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, middle school Jesse, you know, some of those gifts that had been pushed down because they were so scary. Because again, like I had mentioned, those gifts meant hurting people, getting expelled, right? There's a lot of shame for me around it. So I think my meditation practice allowed me to feel like I could face that. And then in doing so, I started to practice being in the spotlight more. Like actually not just being the person behind the scenes promoting the bands, but actually being the person to, you know, organize the group coming together.
The group coming together would be called the Big Quiet.
And at our first Big Quiet, you know, we did a partnership with New York City Parks Foundation on the main stage at Central Park, which is this venue that I loved as a music industry person. So it was so cool to do our own event there, our first Big Quiet there. There were probably 40 people in our community who played roles in making that event happen, from people who were overseeing the stage design and stage management to educating people in the audience about meditation. Everybody played a role. The Big Quiet was able to exist for that first year because we had such strong volunteer network. We had people who were so committed to spreading meditation into making meditation be this thing that was accessible and social and just different than the way we always knew it. And we were able to grow it because of that. Our social media account was started by, a group of people who do social media professionally, and, they volunteered to get it off the ground. Our PR, our brand partnerships, so many people along the way that made it happen. By the 1 year mark, as there was real momentum, we had 1,000, I think we had 1,500 spots that sold out for that first Big Quiet at Central Park. And then we started getting these invites to do it at other places. By the end of the first year, we decided, let's charge for this. Initially, we were giving all the proceeds to charities, and then we said, we can really do something awesome with this if we can hire people. And I made the decision to make it a for-profit business, and hired our first employee, and started to treat it more like a business. And it started to follow the model of ticket sales, brand partnerships. And it was great because we got to work with brands that we loved, who would create products that our audiences loved. It's so interesting. I really believe this. When we're doing something that truly gives us energy, it's at that intersection of gives us energy and we're uniquely gifted to do it, the zone of genius. When we really give ourselves to it, and doing those things happens to serve a need, a real need in the world, it's wild, the magic that unfolds. And those things lined up. I got so much juice from doing it. I was bringing to life those unique Jesse gifts that had been pushed down from, 7th, 8th grade.
Was your anxiety gone at this point?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't?
I really struggled throughout the whole journey of the Big Quiet. And it was this, I wouldn't say I struggled. I'd say I experienced a lot of challenge, because it was this back and forth of experiencing anxiety, experiencing that discomfort of facing this thing that felt so scary to me, and then owning my power, and then embracing that this is what I meant to be doing, and remembering that it's serving something that's so important to people, not only around meditation, but gathering people, community, coming together. And it was this balance of I'd forget and I'd go to this place of fear, and I'd remember and I'd come into this place of power. And that dance was such a beautiful part of the first many years of the Big Quiet, and I think it's worth mentioning, a few years into the Big Quiet, I felt ready to go off of Lexapro, the SSRI that I'd been on since I was having my panic attacks as a younger man.
And then Madison Square Garden came calling. And Jesse was back in a tango with himself. One side reaching the pinnacle of success as a meditation leader, and the other feeling the anxiety sneaking back in. It's a dance I know well. I'm a fitness influencer, and sometimes I skip the gym for a week, and it can be hard to grapple with when you feel like everyone thinks you should be perfect.
We were bringing the Big Quiet to MSG. It was a cold outreach. They emailed us cold and invited us to come. It was the coolest thing. And I remember how exciting it felt to know that we were going to do the first mass meditation at MSG. But inside, I was having such a tough time withdrawing from Lexapro and feeling more anxious and more on the verge of panic than I had felt probably since those college days. And it was, again, this really interesting thing of people would, I'd bump into community members on the street. They'd be like, MSG, no way, you're crushing it. And inside I'd be like, man, if you only knew how tough my internal reality was. And it took me a little bit of time to speak up about it, because I had shame around being on an SSRI while also being this figure in wellness and meditation. It was the week of the MSG Big Quiet. MediClub is like a mini version of the Big Quiet that would happen every single month, whereas the Big Quiet would happen every quarter. And there's about 300 people every MediClub. And at that event, I shared my real reality. I was like, in a few days, for those of you that are coming to MSG, you'll see me with the Bieber mic, and I'll be in front of, this huge group of people. And I also want to share with you my current reality, which is that I'm withdrawing off of Lexapro, something that I've been on for years that I never felt like I could share. And it's this really challenging, exciting, painful journey. And I spoke about it. And I remember this line of people afterwards that wanted to connect. Each person said, they kind of did like I'm also on Lexapro. I don't tell anybody. Like, I can't believe you take it, Jesse. I was like, yeah, I do. Like, I go through all this shit. Those are actually were my favorite moments in Big Quiet, even more so than like the big stage lights and the sold out arenas. It was the moments where we could be human together. That's really what it was about.
And at the same time, you're feeling grounded, you're feeling supported, and you're feeling non-attached to the emotion of the thoughts.
To hear Light Watkins on the Gratitudeology podcast, scroll back a few. You'll hear his episode was dropped on July 1st. When Jesse talks about being human together, he's talking about a togetherness with thousands of people. Just imagine that.
Once the eyes are closed, once we've breathed a little bit, once we've given permission to ourselves to feel whatever shit we're feeling right now and to embrace it, to welcome it, and to not judge it or resist it, to just be with it, right? Given permission to feel thousands of people. We would then invite people to think about someone in their life that is alive or that's passed away that they love. And in this place, to see that person, imagine that person sitting across from them, and to see them smiling, and to feel into the joy that they've experienced with that person. And then to feel into their heart and send that person love in whatever way that looked or felt like for them, to just send that person love and to just be with that sensation. The feedback that I would hear so often, and it was at its most potent when I was touring with Oprah, and Oprah really liked that practice, so I was doing that in arenas, 15, 17,000 people at a time. The thing that I would hear first, the thing that was so interesting was that you'd always hear people crying. It was like one person would cry and it would give permission for other people to cry, which in my opinion is the most potent healing practice there is. Releasing emotions, being with emotions, crying, so powerful. But the thing that I would hear all the time, pretty often afterwards, is people would say, holy shit, I lost my grandfather, or I lost my child, or I lost, this loved one. And that was the first time I really felt their presence. Being with so many other people, given permission to feel, being permission to remember them and send love to them and open my heart to them, I felt that I was with them again. That to me was the coolest thing to hear.
That is incredible. And so now let's clearly just take a beat back and talk about Oprah. So I like how you just kind of skipped over that. So tell me how that came to be.
Yeah, so we started doing this thing in 2018 where we were touring the Big Quiet in the way that we used to tour bands at our label. It was this awesome fusion of what I learned from the music industry and what I was doing, what we were doing with the Big Quiet. And we started touring. So we'd go to a different city pretty much every day or every other day. We would partner with an iconic location, and we would invite hundreds or thousands of people to have a Big Quiet moment. So the second time we toured in Chicago, we were at the Museum of Natural History. We did our mass meditation right in front of the largest discovered dinosaur, this huge dino. And some of Oprah's team came to that Big Quiet event. And they got to experience it, and they really enjoyed it. So they invited me to have a moment at what was going to be Oprah's 2020 Vision Tour, this huge arena tour she had coming up in 2020. I was invited to give a short talk and to guide a meditation for the Brooklyn stop, which was the coolest because Barclays Center was a place I always dreamed of doing the Big Quiet. And that was, I think, like midway into her tour. And a couple weeks before the tour began, I got a call saying that my spot was removed. And I was so bummed. I was so looking forward. It was, I just moved out of New York, so it was going to be my big return and a place that I was so excited about. And Mel, who's the incredible producer of Oprah's, really fought for me. And she was like, all right, I don't think we're going to be able to get you Barclays, but we're going to see if we can get you Fort Lauderdale. It's the first tour stop. What do you think? And I'd be like, I'll take anything. And they decided to give me a 30-minute slot, which was so incredibly generous, especially when, they could have had Deepak. They could have had these way bigger names in meditation or wellness. I did a talk, I guided a meditation, and then Oprah came on stage and interviewed me. And we talked about those college panic attacks and not being able to speak in front of 10 people. And then she said,
so you had the fear in college, but the anxiety, how do you go from being a really anxious, compulsive person to this?
Couple things. The first has been having practices where I can just cultivate the self, like meditation, like eating clean, like movement, exercise. Taking care of myself first and foremost has been a really big part of that. But the second piece, this may be the most important piece, has been for me to just be accepting of the fact that I feel anxiety sometimes. Even when I lead 15,000 person mass meditations, I still feel anxiety, I still get stressed, I still feel depressed sometimes. And when I'm able to accept that and almost love that as part of who I am, it melts.
And that was a really, touching moment for me, and my family was in the audience. They flew out for it, so that was really cool.
To see a picture of Jessie on stage with Oprah herself, head on over to our Instagram at Gratitudeology. 2 days later, Jessie got the call.
I said, hey, can you come on the whole tour? And the reason why I share that is because it's such a reminder that when that Barclays thing didn't work out, I was so devastated. But then it led to me not only doing Barclays, but doing the entire tour. And we got to bring the Big Quiet for the whole thing. So I just wanted to share that anecdote because so often things that we think are not going to plan are actually happening for an important reason.
I think that's so important. When you're sitting in that disappointment, that shitstorm, whatever it is that isn't going according to plan, or rather what you think is the plan, it's so hard to see what might be on the other side of it. I'm so impressed that Jessie was able to do that while holding space in conversation with Oprah. I mean, I'm a pretty confident gal, but I can't imagine how you guide yourself through that big of a moment.
We were doing 4,000 person Big Quiets up to this point. 15,000 in an arena with Oprah sold out with like all the media in the world and every celebrity there. That was a whole other experience for me. And I remember talking to my mentor, Johnny Pollard, who's been a critical piece, this whole journey with the Big Quiet, critical. He said to me, take the rest of the night to be really, because I was very excited. I can't believe it. Can you believe it? Like that kind of energy. He said, take the rest of the night to be really excited. He said, but when you wake up tomorrow, understand, of course you're doing this. Look at all the work you and the team and the community have put into building, this movement. He said, of course you're meant to be on stage with Oprah. Of course you're meant to have this experience. He said, so when you wake up tomorrow, just start owning it. Just start owning it. And it was the best advice because I got to kind of like have my fanboy energy for the rest of that night. And when I woke up in the morning, I woke up and I was like, let's go. I was born for this. We were meant for this moment. Like 8th grade Jessie is fully resurrected and giving those gifts in a way that's not harming, but is actually helping.
With so many gifts to give and receive, I want to know if Jessie has a gratitude practice.
Yeah, I do. It's really, really critical. You asked me if I was still experiencing panic and having challenges as the Big Quiet grew. And I mentioned, there's been all sorts of waves around feeling really good and then feeling, really out of control and really freaked out. And that's started to level out more in my life. But what I have found is that when I have challenging moments, it usually comes for me early morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I'll wake up. Sometimes I'll feel a little heart palpitation or I'll feel, some of that anxiety in my body. The practices that help me most, one of them is just really noticing where I'm feeling it and being with those sensations and allowing any emotions that might want to move through me to move. Sometimes that will lead to crying. Sometimes I'll feel numb. Sometimes that might lead to some anger coming out. So valuable. The other thing that has been so helpful for me, I ask myself 5 questions. It's usually in bed at 4 a.m. when that comes up. And it's probably the thing that most effectively allows me to fall back asleep, more so than breath work, more so than a medication. And it's these 5 questions, and I do it in my head. What are 3 things I'm grateful for? What are 3 things I love about myself? What are 3 things I'm proud of myself for? What are 3 ways that I believe in me? And then the last one is there one thing in my life right now that I can let go of that I can place more trust in. And it's, it probably takes me 10 minutes. And I just think through it, and I just feel my heart go from this, pounding, to opening, calm, still. And it's such a meaningful way to bring me back out of whatever the fear or worry is and into the man that I am, the life that I have, the journey that I've been on, the process that I'm in. And gratitude and these practices around my worth and letting go have been foundational in my journey, critical in my journey.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I love the moments when a person is able to remember how awesome they are, how powerful they are, how great they are. And I would say that I want my legacy to be, what I want to leave behind is communities, tools, practices, reminders, methodologies to remind people how powerful they are, to remind people how special they are. If my work on this earth can leave people in that place, I'll be so happy.
In the meantime, Jesse says the Big Quiet is on a break from touring while they figure out what's next.
And I gotta say, while it's been challenging at times to give space to this thing that has so much of my identity is attached to, it's been such a gift to just let it rest and to allow for room for me and for our team to focus on other things and, to allow for some of that energy to come back, because there's a lot of work, touring events, being in front of huge groups, so grateful for it. And a lot of it's really challenging. So giving ourselves permission to take a break. Shout out to anybody that's listening or watching, who feels pressure to always be going with their businesses or with whatever they're doing. These breaks are so valuable. Yeah. So in that, I've been able to have more space. For work, I've really been finding it gratifying to work in a one-to-one capacity. I do it in two ways. I work with public figures, CEOs, and founders as a leadership coach, and I help them with all of the things: work, relationships, even dating, and so much of it's rooted in meditation and the practices that have really helped me. And then I also mentor a lot of people who are building communities and building businesses in wellness. That's one of the ways that I give back, and it's also one of the things that gives me the most energy. So it's less of the wide scale, super widespread stuff. It's less wide. It's more deep. So that's kind of the way that I'm keeping that 8th grade Jesse energy alive right now, and making room to work on myself, to really develop in the romantic partnership that I'm in with my girlfriend Melissa, and making room for what's next, if that's with the Big Quiet or if that's something new.
Less wide, more deep. I think that's something we can all strive for, whether it's big or small, in the noise or in the quiet. Jesse Israel, thank you for sharing your story. And I'm so glad that you figured out how to get back to that young leader in a way that's mindful, productive, and filled with gratitude. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right